Good evening and welcome to the 8th episode of 3 Minute Thursdays. We all exhibit negative behaviors and our general tendency is to either suppress them, how do I control my anger, or how do I justify them by blaming it on the other people. Now I believe through my own personal transformation that negative behaviors have the seeds of transformation. If only we knew how to handle these behaviors effectively. So far in this series, we have used mindfulness as a way to tackle these behaviors, but then mindfulness is a long-term strategy and it's work in progress. Is there anything else we can do? I've been reading this book and trying to digest it, Your Brain at Work by David Rock. It's a brilliant book. He says that our human brain is still in hunter-gatherer survival mode. Then the smallest rustling of a blade of grass would have triggered the fight or flight response in us. Today, he says, these same responses are triggered by these threats that he calls the scarf. Status, which is our personal reputation or standing, if it gets impacted. For example, a bad rating or a denied promotion could trigger this. Certainty. I experience this all the time whenever I am trying to catch a flight. Will I miss the flight? If I miss this flight, what will happen? That uncertainty causes me anxiety. If I have a micromanaging boss who doesn't give me freedom into my work, my autonomy is threatened. Relatedness is in-group, out-group. If I'm in the midst of strangers from other cultures or I am in a party where I don't know people, that could be a problem. Fairness. Maybe the brown-nosing bozo in the next cubicle got promoted ahead of you and you think it is unfair. So many of these threats may apply simultaneously, making the trigger bigger and bigger. So I came up with a metaphor to explain this of an automatic gun. The trigger is the threat and the negative behavior is the bullet that is shot out, which damages us as well as other people. And David Rock shows that you have about 200 milliseconds before the negative behavior is shot out from the gun. How do we take control of this? And he proposes that there are two strategies, labeling and reappraisal. I believe they should be treated as a 1-2 punch. First you do labeling and then you do reappraisal. I'll give you an example. 3 days a week I share the gym with a Zoomba group. And if you have not encountered Zoomba groups, they play their music at a very high volume and that kind of irritates me. It's too noisy for me. This threatens the autonomy because I don't have control over my environment. I rate this trigger at about 3 to 4. I don't know if you have experienced what are known as amygdalic hijacks where you completely lose control of yourself. That would be a 8 or a 10 level trigger. This isn't quite there yet but bothersome. I also gave it a creative name because labeling I think should be creative. I came up with this creative name called Zoomba Noisemakers. Now as soon as I observe the pattern and think of the creative name, the processing has shifted from the amygdala, the lower part of the brain, to the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of system 2. Thereby I have delayed the trigger. Now that I have taken control over the trigger a little bit, how do I change my actual behavior? We will cover that in the next episode. Until then, I thank you all for listening to me, the coverage of Your Brain at Work by David Rock. See you all again in 2 weeks.